And today we get asked the question, what does it mean to worship? What does it look like to worship, and how should we worship? So let me read Matthew chapter 26, and I'm going to begin at verse 6. While Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which he poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you'll not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Here's a question for you. What is worship? What does worship mean? The best way I've ever learnt to understand the word is to break it up and slightly change it. This is where our English word comes from. Worship, worth-ship. That's a helpful way to remember what worship is. It's worth-ship. So really, what we're doing when we are worshipping something is ascribing worth to it. We're saying how much it's worth, what it means to us, what it deserves. That's what worship is. Now, when it comes to worship, actually, you can do it anywhere and you can do it to anything. You can worship everything. Because you see, worship is giving something worth, saying it is worth the most in my life. And so, right from the Ten Commandments in the Old Testament, God is always telling us, don't worship anything else. Don't have false gods, idols. Because I don't know if you realize this, but sometimes things in your life can become the things that you worship. And what we do is we do two things. The first thing is we give them worth. We say, you are worth the most. But then as well we say, and you give me my worth. This is where my identity comes from. Worship is a two-way thing. You give it everything, but in effect it defines you. It gives you everything. So worship, you can worship anything. But when you worship, it does involve your everything. You know, sometimes we think of worship as just singing. And singing is worship, and it's not less than worship, but worship is more than singing. So a quick glance through the New Testament. Romans 12 says you can offer your bodies as living sacrifices. This is your holy and pleasing worship. Revelation, though, says that heaven is full of sung worship. Hebrews says that we offer our lips as worship. But then Hebrews also says sharing with others is worship. Revelation says that prayers is worship. Philippians says that the collection is worship and your standing order is worship. So worship can be anything. Let me give you a list of some things you can worship. Some of them you won't believe. Did you know you can worship school? Some of you are going, no, we can't, John. But honestly, some people can. What I mean is this. They will do anything for education. They will do anything to learn more, and they will sacrifice everything. And whenever you talk to them, it always comes down to how well they're doing in school. Not only do they give everything because it's worth everything, but actually their whole worth is based on school. That's why if you don't get that mark, you're completely crushed, because your worth is dependent on marks. So some of us worship school. I never worshipped school. That wasn't a problem for me, because if I was going to worship school, I'd be a very sad man. But school, you can worship it. What about sports? You can worship sports. You can sacrifice for a sport, but not just playing the sport, supporting the sport. It's not bad to play and do well and practice. It's not bad to support sport, just like it's not, I better say that, it's not bad to go to school. Sorry, Rian. It's not bad to go to school, but actually, once it becomes the thing that you will sacrifice everything for the sport, and your soul and happiness depends on how you've done in that sport, it's then coming into the realm of worship. social media, your phones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Those can become things. Whatever you do, it's got to go on there. So if you go and see an amazing sunset, it's not brilliant until you put it on your Instagram with a filter and someone likes it. Then it's a great sunset. And so actually you give your worth to it. You don't enjoy the moment. Sometimes you go to concerts. Have you ever done this? You go to a gig or a concert and no one's watching the front. Everybody's watching their phone, watching the front. And you think, what are you doing? Enjoy the moment. Love it. But it's more about having the film shakily given than enjoying the moment. Success. Success is great, isn't it? And it's good to be successful. But actually, when you're willing to sacrifice for success, or your happiness is based on your success, it becomes the thing you worship. It can be anything in life. Here's my question this morning. What do you say is worth the most in your life? And one of the ways to ask that is your bank balance. Where does most of your money go? What are you willing to lay to one side for the sake of something else? And what is it that really sets you happy or sad? Changes your equilibrium? There's a chance, actually, that that's what you worship. And so what we have in today's story and in the history in the Bible is actually an account of two different worships. There's the woman who comes and anoints Jesus. She worships God. And then there's Judas. Did you notice him? He was a funny Judas, wasn't he, to be fair? But you know what? What did he worship? He worshipped money, but he hid it. Do you notice how he hid it? Or we could give it to the poor. But when I read from Matthew's gospel, we found out that actually he'd been stealing the money and he went straight out to sell Jesus for more money. The question is, what are you going to worship? Do you know, if you want to worship Jesus, if you want to worship God, what should it look like? I think this is the perfect illustration of what worship should look like. Let me give you two words to describe worship. The first one is this: expensive. Worship should be expensive, not in terms of money, but in what it costs you. Did you notice she came and she had the jar of perfume? And Judas pointed out, he said to the two men, you know, both of you couldn't earn that much in a year. This perfume was worth about a year's wages. It was so expensive. Now, when it comes to perfume, I don't know much about it, but I've had a lesson. So here's a bottle of perfume. Now, it turns out, children, just for you to know, if you want to buy any perfume, is it next week, Mother's Day? Or the week after, 2 weeks' time, start saving your pocket money. You can get a nice bottle of perfume for about 50 pence, if you're lucky. But perfume's really expensive. But when it comes to perfume, a little is the best. Do any children want to come out here who aren't allergic to perfume? Do you want to see how powerful perfume is? Come and stand here. You don't have to stand close. Anybody else? So the thing about perfume is, all you need is a little bit, and it changes everything. But this woman comes to Jesus, and she grabs, here's my bottle of aftershave. She grabs the bottle of aftershave, and do you know what she does? Pours it on his head. You're thinking, what are you doing? You only need. Now, I smell amazing. This is brilliant. What was she doing? She didn't need to do that. But she was just showing her heart. You see, some of you, I know this is true, you have two sets of china and cutlery in the house, don't you? So when I come around, yeah, let's find, it's not too chipped. Well, there you go, John, it's fine. But when the in-laws come around, what happens? The best china comes out. The best knife and forks come out. Why? They're important. You want to show them worth. And for this woman, when Jesus came, it wasn't good enough just to have a spray. It had to be expensive. You know, God demands an expensive worship. It should cost us. That is, we come and we give him everything. But not only should worship be expensive, the second word I want to give you is this. It should be an experience. So children, when you came down and I sprayed that little bit of perfume, you could sense it. You could smell it. And when Jesus was sitting there in that one story where he has his feet covered, now when I have my head covered, you feel it. You can sense it. And actually worship is something that you should sense. It's something that you experience. I wonder if the problem with Judas was this. He was around Jesus, and Jesus was on the outside of him, but Jesus wasn't in his heart. It wasn't in his heart. It's easy to be around Christianity and Jesus, but never to truly know Jesus. True worship is expensive, and true worship is an experience. And so you have it, and the big question is, how are you worshipping Jesus? Are you worshipping him properly? Are you excited by Jesus? Let me ask you a question. How do you improve in your worship? Now, at this point, you'll think I'm going to give you the answer which is wrong. See, think about what I'm saying. Worship is expensive and worship is experience. So how do you worship more? Well, make it more expensive. Have a greater experience, isn't it? Do more, sacrifice more, be more, and go and have a better experience. Make it better. Get lights and smoke machines. Come on, let's do the experience. Actually, that's not how you do it. You see, I've missed the key ingredient to true worship. You see, why did the woman anoint Jesus? Now, different passages, actually, you've got two different women for different reasons. One woman does it because she's been forgiven so much, because no one ever accepted her, no one ever loved her, no one ever gave her worth which wasn't based on performance. But Jesus came and gave her everything. And so she worshipped him as an expression of his love. It's because his love was so expensive. It's because she experienced his love that she worshipped him. Actually, the best way to worship isn't about asking how expensive it is or how much it feels the experience. It's all about Jesus. You see, if you see Jesus, you will want to worship. It's automatic. Now, I have an obsession. And this week, my obsession was realized. Now, for geeks and nerds, you're going to love this. The rest of you are going to look at me odd. But I am obsessed by Grugynnog Press, which kind of was active in a certain way for about 20 years between 1929 and the 1950s. It was this little-known press in Powys by the Davis sisters, but don't worry. And these books have been made, and they're made by hand. Each piece of paper is made by hand. And all of the artwork in the book, the words and the calligraphy is coloured and beautiful. The illustrations are beautiful. No two pieces of paper are exactly the same. And the books, which are of some of our greatest books in Welsh, like the Psalms and the Life of St. David, sometimes they only made 75 copies of a book. Now, since I've heard about these books, I've been trying to trace them. Going to Hay-on-Wye, going into shops. Have you got a Grugynnog Press book? Everybody says no. This week, I went into a library, and on the table was a Grugynnog Press book. It was unbelievable. Now, Dom was there. Dom, I was like a child in a sweet shop, wasn't I? Dom even laughed at me because I got so excited. Even the librarian thought I was a little bit weird. I was just so excited. Now, I love books. I love books. But this book, I literally gasped. And then I was like, can I hold it? She was like, yes. Oh, I held the book. Usually when I buy a book, you know the first two things I do when I buy a book? I break the spine and I write my name in it. Oh, I'm a vandal for some people living on the edge. It's the first thing I do. This book, I held it. Dare I say, to my shame, I think I slightly worshipped it, because I've been looking for it. Now, the next day I went to another library and I found a whole section of them. I won't tell you how I responded to that. That's very embarrassing. Why did I respond like that? Did I have to try to? No. Did I have to work myself up? No. I was just so filled by excitement by what I saw. And you know, if you want to grow in worship, don't try and spend more in worship. Don't try and feel more in worship. Just look to Jesus. Come to know him, and if you look to him, you will worship, and you will give him your worth, and here's the exciting thing, you will find your worth in him. So no matter what happens in school, no matter what happens on social media, no matter what happens with your success, no matter what happens in sports, you will know you're loved, you will know you are his, and you will worship him.